Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the PowettPlay Podcast. It's me, Jordan Shannon. As always, I'm joined by Kieran Powell. How are you, Kai?
I'm not too bad, John. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Yeah, not too bad at all.
Oh,
So, what's
obviously,
that?
we're not in the studio
No,
as we were planning a trip, but obviously some
no.
things have happened. But we
Yeah,
be getting the content out to the
yeah,
masses still.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, we're getting the content out, which is the main thing. And there'll be some, no doubt, hopefully, some future trips on that down the line that can
Yeah,
get some content and some out sorted anyway, really. But I think in terms of tonight's episode, we want to look at three things. Really want to discuss the CPL draft and the impact or the lack of impact potentially the Breakout League has had. We're going to look at the comments that Daren Sammy made in terms of Kavem, Hodge and Alick Athanaze. And then finally, just wrap it up a little bit, talking about the award ceremony that took place um, on
last
Monday,
night.
last night, Sunday night, yeah. So with that in mind, in terms of the CPL draft that took place, what was your thoughts on it straight away, really?
It's interesting. You, I think there was supposed to be at a minimum 18 players selected from the Breakout League.
Yeah,
Think we've seen just shy of double that. I think there's 33 players
yeah,
selected across the franchises that would have played in the breakout league. So, it's having an immediate impact. And I guess this is what the West Indies Cricket Board would have hoped for. This is what Daren Sammy would have hoped for. Um, Trying to get younger players, trying to blood new players into
yeah,
the CPL where you can sort of create a um, I guess, widen your talent pool in terms of players that you're looking to
yeah,
develop and have available for selection for the West Indies. So it's interesting to see the breakdown of which teams took how many players. Obviously, I think the Patriots were the leading team with 7 players from that breakout tournament,
yeah,
whereas the TKR team had the least amount of selections, I think, with 3.
yeah,
It's from the breakout tournament. So, it shows, I guess, where some franchises are in
yeah,
terms of their mindset towards it, adapting that, or trying to go towards what the West Indies requires, as opposed to trying to go towards an individual franchise's targets and aspirations are. Because ultimately, it's still a franchise T20 league, and
that's it.
ultimately, the owners have an obligation to themselves
Of
to
course.
try and win
Yeah,
because you're investing a lot of money, your sponsors, etc. You want to win,
yeah,
but I think there needs to be some sort of a balance because you look at what's happening with the test team and I guess all the teams across the board, and what's happening with the CPL. You find a lot of the players in the CPL are a bit older. Majority of the players that are household names
yeah,
in the CPL teams and across the CPL don't play for the West Indies, whether it is through non-selection or lack of interest in playing for the
yeah,
West Indies. So it's not necessarily serving the purpose that West Indies cricket needs it to serve in terms of developing players
yeah.
for West Indies cricket across formats because you found now that T20 leagues don't just provide players for those domestic countries for just T20 cricket anymore. It provides players for
Yeah.
Test audio cricket as well. You look at Sai Sunadasan that's made his debut for India
Literally
in
going to say,
this
I was
Test
literally going to
match.
mention that
Yeah,
then.
you look at him and the way that he's transitioned his game
Yeah,
in this season's IPL compared to other seasons
yeah,
and increased his strike rate without taking many risks at all shows I guess the level of batsmanship that he's been able to, I guess, hone over a few seasons and having access to the players that he would have had access to and being able to
definitely.
develop his game and learn from them, and ultimately be rewarded with an international call-up is what the West Indies are trying to replicate. So
Definitely.
it's going to be interesting to see how the Breakout League continues to impact the CPL and how the CPL
Yeah,
looks to impact West Indies cricket going forward.
yeah,
But I think that it is interesting which teams selected more players and which teams didn't, and the age group.
yeah,
The players and their ages in those teams
yeah.
that are, I guess, above 30 as opposed to under 30.
Yeah, the TKR point that you make is interesting because, like you said, they've gone with less, but they've all, the likes of a Nathan Edward and a McKennie Clark, you can't see them featuring when you look at the 11 that they're going to put out, or they're going to play obviously bits and pieces roles, but they both had strong breakouts, and it's like, oh, how do you bridge that gap between it? And I think we've spoke before about adding more teams into it. We know that Jamaica don't have a team, and if you could add another team, and it also gets another squad of players, and it gives that extra exposure to the young players as well.
I mean, Nathan Edward did open the bowling for TKL last season. Um,
Do you think he will though
so
this time? When I look,
I think he'll play some games because
yeah,
they'll definitely put some sort of stipulation where you need to have X amount of players play. I know it's normally like 3 to 5 games, but they may have something where they have maybe you need to play two instead of one emerging or breakout player for all of the games as opposed to two, so because you want to develop these players.
that'd be a positive,
Um,
wouldn't it? That'd be a positive statement to
yeah,
make.
100%. Because then instantly you have what's that? 6 teams. You've got 12 players
Yeah,
that are. But having said that, it's not necessarily 12 because you look at the likes, for example, um, of a Alick Athanaze.
yeah,
He's already an international player.
yeah,
So I guess teams can sort of trick the system in that sense. Joshua De Silva is already an
yeah,
international player. You
yeah,
can trick the system in that sense.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but it's going to be interesting to see. I think that in the case of TKI, it's interesting because those are household names as well. You're talking about Sunil Narines, the Karen Pollards,
yeah.
um, the Nicholas Purans, so the Andrew Russells, etc. I mean, these are not guys that you can just replace or get rid
No,
of. And I
no.
think that, in my opinion, they've made a good move by appointing Dwayne Bravo as the head coach. I saw him earlier in the year when I was in Trinidad, and I asked him like, what doesn't he get involved in West Indies cricket with us? That's a whole nother conversation. But
Right, okay.
for me, um, thinking back to some of the people that I would have played cricket with, I think that Dwayne Bravo's way of going about cricket, having been captained by him,
Yeah,
his way of leadership, it's very interesting, and it opened my mind as a young player as to, okay, you're being taught to play the game in obviously very formal and structured manners, but there's no one way to do things. Dwayne
no.
Bravo is, in my opinion, as I said, a good motivator, but he makes you think about every angle that you can possibly win as opposed to
Right,
just
okay.
trying to go about it in one particular way. So I think that as a young player, that's something that I opened my mind to after seeing Dwayne Bravo captain and some of the things he did. So I think that that would be a good move, especially for those young players, as you
Yeah,
mentioned, because
yeah.
he's obviously a very experienced cricketer and definitely very experienced T20 cricketer and no coach.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a step in the right direction, as we spoke about, of getting these successful people from the successful players from the Caribbean back into that system and feeding that knowledge and experience into the game. It's quite interesting you mentioned there about, from a leadership perspective, and it just goes to show that, leadership and captaining, it's not all like one size fits all, is it? You have these different philosophies and ideas, and it's not necessarily having the ideas, it's how you actually allow players to put that into practice as well.
100%, because I'll tell you, I think Dwayne Bravo, Daren Sammy, and a Marlon Samuels from a mindset
Yeah,
standpoint obviously made me look at things a lot differently than I guess anyone else that I would have played with throughout my career. Because I think you look at Marlon Samuels,
yeah,
two MVPs of 220 World Cup, T20 World Cup finals, to be able to perform in high pressure situations and have the level of clarity that he has operating in those circumstances, it's obviously a testament to him, and it's a testament to Jamaica cricket and Jamaica
yeah,
cricket infrastructure as well, but also the way that Marlon was brought up, because to thrive under such high pressure, not once, but twice,
Yeah,
means that it's something that's innate within you that you're able to tap
100%.
into.
Yeah.
And then a Daren Sammy, I remember once we were playing an ODI game somewhere and can't remember, but one of the death bowlers, they were going at like 10 and over. I was like, Sammy, like, I came running off the boundary I was like, you have to take this man off. And he's like, what? I said, this man going at 10 and over, we're going to lose this game. And he's like, the asking rate is 15 though. So he's actually doing an amazing job. And every time they don't get the 15, it goes up.
Yeah.
And the girl from the other end was bowling really well as well. So that made me start understanding, it's not just because somebody isn't having quote unquote
Yeah.
a good, is they're not bowling six perfect Yorkers
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're getting hit for a boundary and lots of twos or whatever the case is, but they're actually increasing the required run rate
Yeah.
based on the match situation. So it's just understanding that it may not look good optics wise
Yeah.
in terms of guys are going for runs, but they're going for less than what's required, and so the rate keeps going up. So it's just understanding things and I guess taking things away from all these different people, and that's why I said that you need to have all these different guys involved in
100%.
West Indies cricket.
100%, definitely. I always it's that quite interesting you say that because I always remember reading an article about Sir Clive Woodward, England's head coach when England was successful from a rugby union standpoint, and he used to have a saying called teacupping, which is thinking clearly under pressure. And he would always put that across to his team about thinking clearly under pressure. And when you mentioned there about Marlon Samuels, when you do that twice, you've got that mindset where no matter what's going on with the game situation and the pressure that is, I've got my game plan and I know what I'm going to do and I'm going to carry this out. And I think it's a real it's a real credit to the players who could do that.
100%, definitely agree with that.
Yeah. So yeah, following on from that, it'd be interesting to see how it goes. I do hope that they bring in, some stipulation, to encourage obviously some of the breakout players in. Yeah, teams are going to be able to maneuver it and manipulate it, but sometimes, that's something that they might have to look into for the next year's breakout in terms of it being a breakout. Because we've quite, you mentioned that at the very start. It's not some of the names that were picked weren't really
Breakouts, but
breakouts.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's something they could hopefully address next year or down the line. But I wanted to ask you as well about Daren Sammy's comments regarding Kavem Hodge and an Alick Athanaze. And you messaged me in terms of discussing it in terms of that, how it makes sense in terms of them bringing in Shea and Casey Carty. What did you mean by that as such?
Well, those are the two guys that are averaging just touching on 50 in international cricket
Yeah.
for the West Indies. There's no one else that I can think of in the Caribbean in any format that's averaging above 40. And so Daren Sammy is putting down a marker to say, all right, people are saying that XYZ player should be in the team, but they're not good enough. And
No.
he's trying to raise the standard of West Indies cricket, and he's coming out firm, which I'm actually in favor of. I
Just
think
to
I
say,
think I
would
like
you like that as a player as well?
I absolutely like what Sammy has said there because I think that he's now starting to, I guess, create his own mark on West Indies cricket and trying to, I guess, and this is how I would take it. He's
Yeah.
encouraging players now to go and be better, go and develop your skills, go and develop yourself. We
Where
don't need, and Sammy doesn't want players to not be averaging 40 plus 50 anymore. He's clearly saying that he's not going to accept that anymore. And therefore, you look at the test team, you could see why he would have gone with a clean slate of players. You could see why he would have gone with players that have performed in ODI cricket because they're performing at the mark, at the standard of greatness in that format of the game. And so if he can get them to transfer those performances to test match cricket, I think that's what he's looking for. But more so holistically, he's putting a stamp down. And mind you, he's putting a stamp down with two guys from the region that he represented for the Windward Islands. So he's not just doing it to
no.
any and anybody. He's
Yeah.
showing that nobody's off the board here. Nobody's untouchable. And I think that's a good thing for West Indies cricket. I think the only thing that's missing in this now is from a regional standpoint, having sort of a strategic plan for West Indies cricket. So Sammy needs his players to be able to do this, whatever those skills
Yeah.
are. And then in the off season, coaches now working with their players to make sure that they have the requisite skills for what the head coach requires and what the West Indies team going forward requires. Because we've seen guys average 50, 60, whatever the case is in regional cricket, but when you get to international cricket, it doesn't necessarily cut the mustard. So Sammy's not necessarily going to be looking at solely performances anymore. There's something that you can tell, you can just see a player and tell, okay, he may not be performing at that standard at regional cricket, but we think that similar to what England is doing, he can transfer those skills to international cricket and be more successful, given better pitches, given a better environment, etc., etc.
How do Kavem, Hodge, Alick, Athanaze, and we'll put Joshua De Silva into this mix as well, following our chat last week with him. How do they get back into this side then?
Well, clearly it's not just a good season, it's weight of runs, it's consistency, it's big scores, and it's showing that whenever you get an opportunity, because Sammy did mention that these guys played in the A-team series and they,
Yeah, true. Yeah,
barring Joshua,
yeah,
these guys played in the A-team series
yeah.
and they didn't deliver. So,
No, no.
they had opportunities to, I guess, put things in their favor, but they didn't. And he
Yeah,
wants people that are going to be consistent performers and people that are going to impact and affect the game.
yeah. And I do. I could tell with the way you were speaking then, and it's great that you feel so passionately about what he's bringing in and his sort of mantra as such with what he's carrying in, what he's carrying out. And we spoke about it last week from a communication perspective. I seem to go on about it all the time from a communication perspective, but the way he's gone about it, he doesn't. It's like he doesn't necessarily have to communicate it out to individuals. He sort of communicated it out as a whole, and by stating this is what the sort of requirement is for me to come into my side.
Well, not to cut you off, I do like where he's going. I'm not fully engraved into. I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not
right. Okay,
drinking the gravy here at the moment, but I like the direction of what he's going
right.
for. I think there still needs to be a bit more clarity. He mentions that he's selecting people for roles. I think he needs to make it specific what the roles are and what the requirements for each role
Yeah,
are, so people have a
great
full
comment.
understanding. This is, I
Yeah,
want to open the batting for the West Indies. I need to
yeah,
strike at X. I need to average Y. I need to
yeah.
have whatever numbers Z. I
That's a
want to
great
open
point.
the
That.
bowling for the West Indies. I need to be able to do whatever it is with the ball. Um,
Yeah,
bowling at 85 plus, whatever the case is.
yeah,
I also think that he needs to own what he's saying. Like don't be like, you're the head coach. If this is what you want, say what you want, because at the end of the day, the results are going to reflect on him.
yeah,
So it really doesn't matter what people think. He's going down this road, fully commit to it, fully go down this road, back what you're saying, believe what you're saying 100%, and say it loud, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be judged with the results at the end, when these games are played. So
yeah. Some brilliant points there, Kai. Definitely clarification, understanding. It'll go a long way. Um, And the third point we're going to mention tonight was the awards that took place Sunday night. Is that an annual event, or was it a first of its kind, or is it just typical West Indies in terms of let's just throw something and away we go?
it's the eighth edition, but I'm not sure over how many years. It's over a long period of time, because I do remember I've been to one, and I was injured during another one. So, but that's literally at the start of my career, and then it just stopped. But I think that it should be something that's an annual event.
Yeah, 100%.
Um, I think that the timing of it is perfect as well, because sort of culminates with the ending of the regional season as well as the start of the international season in the
Yeah,
Caribbean. So it's sort of a perfect time where you can award guys that had a good regional season as well as guys that had a good international season
yeah,
for the international team, and you honor your past players,
yeah.
um,
Nice touch.
servants to West Indies cricket, etc., etc. So I do like it. I just hope that this time it could be the start of something that's an annual event as
Yes, it's
opposed to,
celebrated on an annual
yeah,
basis. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. I mean, you look at, for example, them celebrating the 50th anniversary of West Indies winning the first 50 over World Cup. Obviously, you'd have had so many people that would have impacted
Yeah.
their lives. And I'm not even just talking about the cricketers, no, or West
No, no.
Indies cricket, no, the impact that had on the West Indies, on the entire Caribbean and the Caribbean diaspora
Yeah,
worldwide, motivating them to want to be the best in whatever they were doing
yeah,
at that point in time and that generation, and how people resonate with West Indies cricket
yeah.
because of the success and the good feeling of knowing that our people were doing well and dominating the world.
World, yeah.
Um, those are things that should be celebrated, and those are things that always bring joy to people, no matter um, when you talk about those things. So why not celebrate on an annual basis the successes of West Indies cricket in the past
Definitely,
year?
definitely, yeah. And I can't, when I was obviously they announced the nominees a few weeks ago when they were doing it and things. I kind of thought there could have been some more awards in terms of from a you know from a young player of the year development stuff like that. Really, I want to go full circle from this podcast in terms of discussing the breakout really and sort of try and highlight some of the successes from that youth side of things as well, really. And even if it was like an academy player of the year or, something like that, where you're sort of promoting this next generation that's coming through, really, because, we know that it's not going to be the not too distant future when there is going to be a change of personnel across well, not necessarily all three formats, but it's definitely, from a T20 side of things. And we spoke about highlighting new players and roles and stuff. So I kind of wanted to see a little bit, maybe of more a celebration of that side of things as well, really.
I think obviously because it's so inconsistent in nature, that's where these sort of things happen, where
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have a full roster of, I guess, awards. And obviously with things changing so quickly as well in terms of Breakout League just having its first season. So, them probably not planning or being as detailed as they can
Yeah.
because it's not an annual thing. But as I said, hopefully, as it becomes more of an annual thing, then you can have sort of an annual structure towards it, and it can sort of impact your regional tournaments so that guys know that I'm aiming to be the emerging player. I'm aiming to be the best young fielder or the best young
Right.
batsman, or whatever the
Yeah.
case is.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, brilliant to catch up as well. And we've obviously, unfortunately, we're not going to be, well, I'm not going to be in Barbados, which is very, it is a shame. But we're going to be discussing obviously the test match and breaking that down. And you know how I always finish the podcast. Please continue to keep liking, subscribing, and the comments have been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
They have the way that people have shown support and love. It means a lot to us both. And it's brilliant, to get these questions to you, Kieran, and the way that you come back so articulate. And yeah, I think it's been brilliant. And I know I'm probably rattling on towards the end of every single podcast about it, but I do appreciate it a lot. So please continue to keep liking, subscribing, and sharing because it goes a long way and we do appreciate it.
awesome. Thanks, viewers, subscribers, followers, listeners.
Now, speak to you soon. Cheers, Kai.
Cheers.